Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you guys are having a nice week. Thursday, tomorrow is Friday. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Big weekend in terms of the world of college football and the NFL. Obviously, Colts playing another divisional game on Sunday, trying to avoid starting 0-3 in the division. And then we've got just an awesome slate of games on Saturday for college football, one of the best Saturdays that we're going to see this year. I've got Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports. He's going to join me. We're going to talk college football and all these things. And so usually I would open my show with the Indianapolis Colts and all those things. Instead, I'm going to switch it up a bit today, though. I'm talking Colts, Michael Pittman Jr., his injury, and the rest of these Colts injuries at 10:40, because I've got Shehan coming on at 10:20. I very quickly want to establish my opinions for some of the things that he and I are going to talk about. And one of those things is the Heisman. Okay, this Saturday will mark the halfway point of the college football season. Indiana fans have enjoyed it. Notre Dame fans have mostly enjoyed it outside of that game against Northern Illinois. Casual football fans have enjoyed it. Okay, Purdue fans are ready for basketball season. And I've had a great time watching everything because I love college football. And as with any other year with college football, the Heisman discussion is something that a lot of people pay attention to. Who is the best player in college football? It's the highest award in the sport. Okay, in a lot of ways, like it has become like the NFL MVP award. Okay, it usually goes to a quarterback on one of the best teams. That's what the Heisman Trophy has become. Since 2000, only 4 non-quarterbacks have won the Heisman. 3 running backs, Reggie Bush, Mark Ingram, and Derrick Henry, and 1 wide receiver, Devontae Smith. Every other person to win the award from 2000 on has been a quarterback. And that's what makes this college football season so unique. When you go to FanDuel, Bet365, DraftKings, wherever you go to do your gambling, you'll see that the 2 odds leaders for the Heisman are both non-quarterbacks. Current favor is Ashton Jeanty, beast of a running back out of Boise State, plus 240 odds. The guy with the second best odds is Travis Hunter, right? 2-way star at Colorado who needs no introduction at plus 320. And look, these odds are obviously going to shift. Guys are going to play well. Guys are going to get hurt. Guys are going to play bad. And things are going to shift around and move. Okay, but the fact that we're almost halfway through the year and the 2 leaders are non-quarterbacks, that is an abnormal thing to say the least. And when you talk to college football fans, 98% of them would say that one of these 2 players deserve the award. Okay, and Ashton Jeanty being the favorite, it's pretty straightforward. Just watch him play football. And it becomes very easy to make the argument. He runs people over. He makes guys miss. He has this Steph Curry thing to him. You know how whenever you watch the Warriors and you watch Steph Curry shoot, whenever he misses, I don't know about you, but I'm usually surprised. It's oh, Steph Curry missed a jump shot. That never really happens. That's kind of weird. And it's the same thing with this Ashton Jeanty kid out of Boise State. Whenever he gets tackled, they're that's not supposed to happen. Since when does this guy get tackled? His numbers are insane. Through 5 games, he has 95 carries for 1,031 yards and 16 touchdowns. That's just absurd. That's an average of 10.9 yards per carry. I don't have to explain how stupidly insane that is. Okay, he passes both the eye test, he passes the stats test. He is insanely good, and the stats and the eye test back it up in every way possible. He's on pace to rush for 2,400 yards and 38 touchdowns this year. He won't keep that pace as they get into conference play, but either way, he's getting an invitation to New York solely based off of his start to the season, as long as he stays healthy. This Ashton Jeanty kid has just been absurdly good for Boise State, and it's come out of nowhere, right? And he's the favorite for for good reason. I ran through the numbers, all that stuff. If you've watched him play, then nothing else really needs to be said. But he shouldn't be the winner. Shouldn't be. Travis Hunter undoubtedly should win the Heisman this year. Ashton Jeanty's been great. I feel bad for him because any other year, he'd be the easy selection for the award. But Travis Hunter is the most unique player in the history of college football. And this is coming from a guy who, doesn't really like Colorado, even though they're 4-1 and they're proving me wrong so far through the season. And Travis Hunter draws a lot of comparison to Charles Woodson, won the Heisman in 1997, because he played both sides of the ball. That's what they say, even though that's not true. I would argue that he didn't play both sides of the ball. I would say he was in 1997, Charles Woodson, the best cornerback in the country, and they occasionally featured him on offense. You'd see him from time to time on the offensive side of the football. Offensively, Charles Woodson was like my video game habits as an adult. I don't play all the time. I don't want to play all the time, but occasionally I'll have a Saturday or a Friday night where it's like, you know what I really want to do right now? I want to sit here, I want to eat Doritos, drink Mountain Dew, and play video games, right? And for those couple hours, it really hits the spot. Like, that's who Charles Woodson was as an offensive player. Okay, he didn't play a ton of offense, but when he did, it was fun, it was entertaining, and something cool was probably going to happen. He had 11 receptions for 231 yards and 2 touchdowns the year he won the Heisman. He also had three carries for 15 yards and a touchdown. That's it. Like, they call him a two-way player when, like, he really wasn't a two-way player. Okay, he wasn't a permanent offensive player, but he won the Heisman because that's kind of how he was framed. What Travis Hunter is doing is incredibly different. Like Charles Woodson, Travis Hunter is the best cornerback in all of college football. If you want to tell me that it's the guy from Michigan, okay, fine. Travis Hunter is the second best cornerback in college football. Okay, I'll accept no debate on that statement. Travis Hunter is one of the 2 best defensive backs in all of the college football landscape. He's also one of the 5 to 10 best receivers in college football. Through 5 games, he has 46 receptions for 561 yards and 6 touchdowns. That's more receptions, yards, and touchdowns than Charles Woodson had in his entire career. They are not the same. And that is why Travis Hunter should be the Heisman Trophy winner this year if he stays healthy. College football has been around for a long time. Sports in general have been around for a long time. We logged a lot of history. Okay, like if you go to Wikipedia and you read up on any sport, it's incredibly long because sports have just been around for forever. And every year that we put another season of any sport, but let's just take college football here because that's what we're talking about. Every year we put another year of history. Every year that a college football season ends and it goes into the history books, I think it becomes harder and harder to do something that we've never seen before. Like, it's hard, right? Because when you've got over 100 years of history, like, there's going to be a lot of good players scattered in there. And so when something comes along that's never happened before, it should be rewarded. Ashton Jeanty of Boise State, the running back, if you haven't seen him play, you find a time to watch him. He's must-see TV. Like, he's that good. No disrespect to him, but I've seen dominant running backs in college football before. Okay, I saw Derrick Henry. I saw Mark Ingram. I saw Darren McFadden. Okay, I didn't see Barry Sanders, but you may have, right? Like, we've seen a lot of great running backs in college football. Something we've never seen is a guy who plays both sides of the football like Travis Hunter does. He plays every snap that is not a special team snap. He defends the opposition's best wide receiver, Travis Hunter does. Then he plays as the best receiver on the Colorado offense. Like, the Heisman Trophy is supposed to go to the most outstanding player in college football or the best player in college football. You can't convince me that a player that's the best cornerback in the country and also one of the best 5 to 10 receivers in the country isn't the best player in all of college football. Like you can't convince me of that at all. You can't like that is the best player in the sport. Like you can throw the Ashton G&T stats at me all day. I get it. I understand the argument. The dude's been a beast. He's absolutely dominated. He's going to continue to on Saturday because they're playing Hawaii. Okay, that's the other thing. Boise State's in the Mountain West. I think being dominant in that conference is very different than being dominant in the Big 12, a Power 4 conference like Travis Hunter has been this year. Okay. And here's the truth. Here's the ultimate difference between J.T. and Travis Hunter. 2 is almost always better than 1 in sports. It usually is. Like in baseball, I don't know if you've been watching the playoffs. You know, the Mets advance. I was a Phillies fan for like 2 weeks. I'm absolutely heartbroken by that Francisco Lindor grand slam, even though he's one of my favorite players in all of baseball. But anyway, in baseball, like, would you rather have a player who can only hit for power, a player who can only hit for contact, or a guy who can do both, hit for both power and contact? I think the answer there is pretty easy. In basketball, would you rather have a guy that can only score? Would you rather have, or a guy that can only defend, or a guy who can both score and defend? I think that the answer is, once again, pretty easy. And in football, it's the same thing. Would you rather have the best running back in the country or the best cornerback in the country who's also one of the 10 best receivers? I think the answer to that question is incredibly easy. Like, would you rather have 2 great players or 1? And everyone's going to say 2, right? Like, I think that is just such an easy thing to understand. And that's exactly who Travis Hunter is. And, you know, I just don't know how you don't give that guy the Heisman. He's doing something we've never seen before at an insanely high level. Okay, he is. And, you know, Colorado's 4-1 right now, which is important because for whatever reason, you know, college football voters, guys who vote on the Heisman, like they care about how much your team wins and all those things. And like, yes, like I get it. That's important. But at the same time, it's like, it's an individual award and it's an incredibly team-oriented game. So if Colorado goes 8-4 and Travis Hunter continues to be amazing, then like he should get the award. And this is coming from a guy who, you know, has been pretty vocal on my distaste for Colorado. Like I've been pretty upfront about that. But like I said, they've been pretty good this year. They're 4-1. They're playing Kansas State, 18th ranked Kansas State, Saturday night. That's part of this amazing Saturday slate. I've got Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, college football writer over there. You can read his stuff at cbssports.com. He's joining me at 10:20. So here in about 7 minutes or so, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Heisman. We're going to talk a little bit about this amazing college slate on Saturday. And when you look at Colorado, their 1 loss was to Nebraska, who's a pretty good football team. They've beaten everybody else that they've played. And a large part of that has been because of Travis Hunter. And there's no doubt in my mind that he should be, undoubtedly, he should be the Heisman Trophy winner. Okay, if they go 8-4, 7-5, 6-6, I don't really care. That dude is hands down the best quarterback in the country. Concerns for the Colts. Michael Pittman Jr. could be headed to IR. That is incredibly concerning, considering that he's the best player on this, you know, he's the best receiver on this in this Colts receiver room. Josh Downs also didn't practice yesterday. That's a bit of an issue. Jonathan Taylor didn't practice yesterday. That's a bit of an issue. Our guy, Anthony Richardson, he practiced, you know, he was limited again during practice. And so, like, these injuries for the Colts are slowly piling up. And I've been pretty adamant about how injuries aren't an excuse, right? Gus Bradley said it very well yesterday. He's like, we handpicked this 53-man roster. Like, you know, so the guys that we picked, they're here for a reason, and they need to step up. You know, that is what Gus Bradley said, and I agree with that sentiment wholeheartedly. But at what point do injuries kind of become an excuse, right? Like if the Colts roll in to Tennessee on Sunday with no Michael Pittman Jr., no Josh Downs, no Jonathan Taylor, and it's just Anthony Richardson throwing to Adonai Mitchell, who's made some business decisions throughout the year, and to Alec Pierce, who has had a good year, but has really only done one thing, and that's win vertically down the field, which is important. Like, if those are his two best receivers, like, do we, like, at what point do injuries become an excuse? Right. And that's not including, all the injuries on the defensive side of the football. That doesn't include Juju Brents and Tyquan Lewis and DeForest Buckner and Samson Ebukam all being on IR. Like, at what point do injuries become a valid excuse for this Indianapolis Colts team? I'm going to tackle that question at 10:40. But coming your way here in about 4 minutes, Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports, he said to join me. We're going to talk college football. We have a great slate on Saturday. After that interview, we are back to talking Colts. Kevin Potts at 11 to talk young quarterbacks. How does Anthony Richardson compare to all those guys? So, yeah, loaded show today. It's going to be good. But when we come back here in 4 minutes, Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports is going to join me, and we're going to talk a little college football.
Progressive presents good news, bad news, dumb news, then great news. Good news. While leaning over the fence, your neighbor said you could save money bundling home and auto insurance with Progressive. Bad news. Your neighbor leaned over a little too much and broke your fence. Dumb news. Somehow fence wood is more expensive than wood. Great news. You decide to see if you could save money bundling at Progressive.com and to plant really tall shrubs. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers not available in all states.
Dirt, grime, spills, and more, your home sees some scary stuff. So don't ghost your carpet this fall. Call the cleaning pros at Zero Res. Right now, you can get your entire home Zero Resified from Indy's ultimate carpet cleaner and get 3 rooms of carpet clean starting at just $129 and take $75 off your air duct cleaning. Don't forget about cleaning your dryer vent, too. If you don't schedule your appointment with Zero Res, it'll haunt you. Call 317-388-5141 and ask for the Indy's Sports Ticket Special.
More winners, more often. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you're having a nice week. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in. We've got a great guest lined up, one of my favorite follows on Twitter. He posts great rants about BYU. He also writes amazing articles over on CBSSports.com about the world of college football. Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports joins me now. What's going on, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, you got it. So this Saturday marks the halfway point of the college football season, which feels a little weird. It feels like it's just getting started. We've got a great slate of games, but I feel like this is a good time to talk about the Heisman. There's a couple guys that feel like they've not separated themselves, but they definitely feel like the front runners in Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeyarajah, the great running back out of Boise State. Who do you like right now to win the Heisman? Who's your favorite?
Yeah, well, it's funny. We did a roundtable over at CBS Sports last week before Alabama played against Vanderbilt. And I had my preseason pick, which was Jalen Milroe at the time. Of course, Milroe played pretty well last week against Vanderbilt, but I don't think that you can just take a loss to Vanderbilt and keep chugging along. For me, I lean towards Ashton Jeyarajah. The numbers that he's putting up are absolutely insane. I think something that's really helped him is the fact that he went on the road against the number 3 team in the country in Oregon and had 189 yards and 3 touchdowns. So look, are the numbers slightly higher because he's playing against Mountain West competition? Sure. But also, he dominated a power conference team. A stat that I saw yesterday that's just the craziest thing I've ever seen is that Ashton Jeyarajah is averaging 8.9 yards per carry against 8-man boxes. Like, what do you even do with that? Like, that's just one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. So I think that the impact is there. I think the fact that Boise State is also right now the favorite to be the Mountain West champion and the representative from the Group of 5 in the playoffs is only going to help matters for him. To touch on Travis Hunter, he has been like, the question for me with him was, can you really keep up the pace and level of production that he did through the first couple of weeks? So far, he has. Now, they're about to head into the hard part of their schedule. They got Kansas State this week. And so, look, if he continues to be a 100-yard receiver and also a lockdown cornerback, he is going to guarantee himself a spot in New York. But right now, I think Jeyarajah has a small lead over Travis Hunter.
Vegas would they would agree with you. I was looking at odds last night as I was prepping. I like Travis Hunter. I think any other year I'd be like everyone else. I think I'd be all in on Jeyarajah, but I don't know. He's the best, maybe the second best corner in the country, and so far he's probably one of the 10 best receivers. And when I think about the award, it's supposed to go to the best player, and where Jeyarajah's been incredible. I was looking at his numbers, and they're just insane. I just feel like what Travis Hunter is doing, we've never really seen before, and I feel like for me that kind of gives him the edge.
No, and I think, if those are the two leaders right now, right? I think that everybody else is a little bit behind them. I think, there's a couple ways to think about the Heisman. It's a big part of it too, right? Because I think, there's the aspect of it, of course, being the best player award, but I think that there is also sort of a narrative arc to the Heisman Trophy. And, sometimes it goes too far that direction, right? Where you're just best player, best team, where, not to slight him, but Mark Ingram wins the award. That's not the direction that necessarily I would go. But I do think that when you look at Ashton Jeyarajah, again, he's going to most likely be a 2,000-yard, 25-touchdown rusher, which is just an insane combination of stats. I think that how Travis Hunter is able to position himself as a story as the season goes along is going to be huge. Obviously, if they're able to reach 8-9 wins, be in the conversation for the Big 12 near the end of the year, I think that gives him a much better pathway. I think I'm just worried about what the path is. If they, I do think they'll make a bowl game, sure. They're 4-1 right now. I think that they easily have 2 more left in them. But, if they lose 4 of their last 5 games and he's only pretty good instead of great, I think it's difficult to win the Heisman if you don't have some version of a Heisman moment. And I think that that's going to be the big question mark for Travis Hunter is, did his moments just come too soon?
Yeah, that's That's a valid point, joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports. He's a college football writer over there. Yeah, I'm with you. The Heisman moment thing, like that's important for me. As long as this doesn't wind up being, Texas is the best team in the country, so Quinn Ewers wins it. That's kind of, if that happens, I think a lot of people will be very upset, because that's what I feel like the awards kind of turned into. It's just the best quarterback on the best team since 2000. Only 4 non-quarterbacks have won the award, and I feel like if there's any year for a quarterback not to win, I feel like it's this year because of JT and Travis Hunter, but also because I just don't feel like there's a solidified best quarterback in the country. Is that kind of how you feel as well?
No, I think so as well. And, just to even move over to that quarterback discussion, it's like you look at the biggest indicator actually about how the NFL feels about this year's quarterback class is that they picked 6 in the top 12 last year, right? They're taking their chances off of last year's class. They weren't sitting around and waiting to see what happened with this year. Now, there are good quarterbacks, certainly. I mean, Quinn Ewers is a good quarterback. Carson Beck is a good quarterback. Jalen Milroe, Shedeur Sanders. These are good quarterbacks, but there isn't a transcendent quarterback. There isn't a quarterback. I mean, frankly, we're about to do our midseason All-America ballot after this week's game. I still haven't made a final decision who my quarterback 1 is going to be on there. I lean probably right now towards Milroe, but I don't think it's by any means definitive. So I think that the lack of true power at the top of the board really should open the door for a non-quarterback to win the award. I think the other thing too, to touch on even just the NFL for a second, like I think that defenses in so many ways have responded to the increase in passing, and we're seeing a lot of these 2 safety shells. Actually, in the at the college level, we're seeing a lot of 3 safety looks. And I think that there is sort of this slow movement back towards, hey, you know what, it's really cool to be able to have a great quarterback and have them make plays, but there's actually limitations that come when you can't run the ball, when you can't even maybe do stuff in the quarterback run. I do think that while obviously, the passing game is huge, and actually I think there's some wide receivers who maybe we'll get into the discussion. I think that this is probably, there's been a little bit of a reversion back towards quarterbacks maybe being a little bit less important than they were in years past.
Without a doubt. Speaking of quarterbacks, like you said, Jalen Milroe, people were really excited about him this year in the Kalen DeBoer offense. I'm with you. I thought he played well against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt just hung 40, which was incredible. But another quarterback that I think people were really excited about was Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee. Obviously, they lose as well. I felt like, just based off of my timeline on Twitter, which is never a good measurement of anything, I felt like people were not annoyed, but maybe like surprised that these 2 teams didn't fall further in the polls after their losses on Saturday. Were you surprised by that, or do you feel like they fell the proper number of spots?
Well, I think for me, like, Alabama has a win over Georgia.
Yeah.
And so to me, that did give them a little bit more to sell. Something that I always say, especially in this 12-team playoff era, is that I'll give you one, right? I'll give you one dumb thing happening a year and kind of just be willing to hand wave it off and be okay with that. I think when I start to run into issues is when you take out the one dumb thing and your resume still doesn't look that good. And so for Tennessee, for example, after they lose this game to Arkansas, you look back and it's like, well, Oklahoma looks kind of terrible right now. NC State has been probably the most disappointing team in the country to this point. All of a sudden you start looking, you're like, well, they don't really have a resume and they have a pretty bad loss. So I think that Tennessee should have fallen further. I think that they should have fallen closer to 15 maybe. Alabama, I still was fine with them being in the top 10 because of the resume that they have. Outside of it, the road win at Wisconsin by 30 points, the win over Georgia as well. But I mean, I do think that even, I think, coming into the year, there was this defaulting towards some of these top teams just because they're recognizable and we assume that these teams will figure things out. I actually, after last week, when 5 of the top 12 teams lost for the first time since 2021, I kind of sat back and I was like, look, I feel like I have to just completely restart my ballot. I need to reevaluate. And when you start comparing resume to resume and power to power, I don't know. why BYU isn't right there with everybody. I don't know why Iowa State isn't right there with everybody. I don't know why Indiana wouldn't be closer to the top 10. So I do think that voters have a little bit too much inertia when it comes, especially to, I would say, top SEC teams. And I think that now's the perfect time to reevaluate.
Without a doubt, I think that's a great point. Like you said, almost half of the top 12 teams lost. Miami probably should have lost. We don't have to talk about that call or not call, I guess, on the targeting, but it's been a crazy year, and I'm with you. Speaking of Indiana, joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports. He's a college football writer over there. You can read his stuff at cbssports.com. Speaking of Indiana, they're 6-0. They haven't played anyone good yet, but they've beaten everyone pretty handily. What are kind of your thoughts on them? Are they just a fun story right now, or do you view them as this like legitimate potential playoff team?
Well, I think that here's the reality of the situation is that they haven't played anybody, but when you're a good team and you play a team that's not as good, the way that you prove that you're good is by putting them into the ground. And Indiana has done that 6 straight times. They've won every single game by at least 2 touchdowns. They're winning games against power conference opponents, all 3 Big Ten games, by an average of 20 points per game. There's nothing more that you can really ask of them at this point. I mean, they have down to down been incredibly good. Actually, when you even look at metrics like ESPN Football Power Index, and when you look at SP Plus, things like that, like they actually rate close to the top 15, despite the fact that they haven't played, obviously, a good schedule at this point. Now, the thing that's going to be interesting about them is they play, first of all, on the road against Ohio State. Let's just say hypothetically that, they end up being an 11-1 team. But if they play against Ohio State and get completely blown off the field, I think that that's going to be a tough situation for them trying to make it into the playoffs, even though they might actually make the Big Ten title game in that scenario. But I think that they have to handle their business, certainly. Nebraska is going to be a good test for them. It's kind of their first top 35 team that they're going to be playing at this point. Washington the next week will be a pretty good test for them. That Michigan game, I think, is huge. But Ohio State is, I think, going to be a litmus test for them because they will have one of the weaker schedules among teams that are competing for the college football playoff. And that's a blessing and a curse, right? I mean, obviously, again, they have a chance to win 10 or 11 games, but at the same time, you kind of have to prove your power as well. So I do think that Indiana is a team that we should be keeping an eye on, but it's really going to be until especially that Michigan game. I mean, if they're undefeated through that Michigan game, then I think that we can really, really, really start having a conversation.
Which will be exciting. Like, I'm not from Indiana originally. I grew up in the South. I love college football. My one wish this year was that Indiana would be good so I could talk college football, and that has happened. And so, speaking of college football, we've got this great slate this Saturday. I'm so excited for. I was talking to you off the air, once again joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports. He writes about college football for them. You can read his stuff at cbssports.com. You're going to be there Saturday at the Red River rivalry, which is one of the best rivalries in the entire sport. Texas looks like the best team in the country, but then again, they didn't play last week when all the best teams in the country lost. So who really knows? Their best win though, it's over Michigan, who can't throw a forward pass. Like, what are kind of your thoughts on them, and how much of a chance does Oklahoma have to beat them on Saturday?
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, I think that Michigan game certainly is starting to look less and less impressive just because of what Michigan is doing, nothing to do with Texas. But it's like I talked about with Indiana, right? Like, they put them into the ground. It was 24-3 at halftime. That's what I wanted to see from them. And since then, I mean, they really have not played anybody and not had any trouble to this point this year. While I don't think Oklahoma is very good, I mean, I think that Oklahoma is going to be probably fighting for a bowl game at the end of the year. This is a good defense, and this is especially a good defensive front. So I think we will learn something about Texas with the way that they handle it. But, I actually just put up a piece over at cbssports.com where I kind of wrote about this. Texas is arguably better than Oklahoma at every level of both sides of the ball. Now, I mean, you can get into like, well, maybe the linebackers are a little better but like that's the level that you have to get to find an advantage for Oklahoma. So if I'm Texas, I actually made the comparison to the 2005 game between these two teams when Oklahoma started the year 2-2. Texas, of course, started the year 4-0, and they headed in with a big opportunity, but they have lost 5 straight games against this team. Oklahoma had their number. Similarly, Oklahoma's won 7 of the last 9 of these games, including an upset victory last year. This is an opportunity for Texas to leave no doubt, to put Oklahoma into the ground, to have a chance to not have rivalry game stuff happen, because these two teams shouldn't be peers in 2024 with the way that these rosters are constructed. So I think Texas is going to take care of business. I think they're going to be business-like. I think that they end up winning by more than 2 scores. Now, a 14.5 point line is kind of like that's a huge line for a rivalry game. So maybe it ends up being more in the 10 to 14 range, but I do think that Texas will leave no doubt. I just think that they're a much better team than Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'm with you. They needed a gift to beat Auburn, who's not very good. Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports. He covers college football for them. So I have a problem, Shehan. I just refuse to quit USC. I may or may not have already placed a bet on the money line for them to beat Penn State on Saturday. Then again, I always kind of struggle to buy into Penn State because I feel like they kind of do the same thing every year where they beat teams that aren't very good, and then they get blown out by Ohio State and Michigan and kind of the better teams in the Big Ten. Do you think that like this is a similar Penn State team where they're really good but not great? And what do you think USC's chances are at home on Saturday to beat Penn State?
Well, I've referred to Penn State before as the Big Ten's Mendoza line, and if you can beat them, you're probably a really good team, and if you can't beat them, you're probably not a really good team. And here's the issue for USC, is that they have really struggled to compete in the trenches since Big Ten play started. Of course, against Michigan, Michigan needed 1 drive at the end of the game, and that was enough to beat them. Of course, the Minnesota game last week, it also comes down to a 4th down, 1-yard play call that they ultimately get into the end zone. And Wisconsin even jumps all over them with the way that they play in the trenches. Penn State is that level of team. And so I think it's going to come down in so many ways to whether USC is able to protect Miller Moss and give him an opportunity to go downfield. Because, here's the reality of the situation is that Penn State, when they've allowed quarterbacks to go downfield, they haven't been awesome. I mean, I think back to that Bowling Green game where Connor Bazelak was able to put up 254 and 2 touchdowns, was able to kind of have his way with that Penn State secondary. I don't think that this is as good as some of the Penn State secondaries that have come through before. But the issue is that a lot of the other teams on Penn State's schedule have just not been able to create those opportunities. And I think that, this is one of those games where I think Miller Moss might be running for his life through a lot of this game. So I lean Penn State for that reason. I'm just worried about USC's ability to compete in the trenches. But the other thing you have to say, too, is that whatever you want to say about that Michigan game, that Minnesota game, Lincoln Riley said, we are literally 1 play away or 2 plays away from being undefeated this season. And well, I think that's a little bit loser talk. It's not wrong. Either, right? It's not wrong. And so I do think that this team is better than its record. I think it's better than people give them credit for. I just worry that Penn State is exactly the type of team that's going to make them pay.
Yeah, that's a very fair criticism of USC. I just love Lincoln Riley. I think he's amazing, and I just can't seem to quit USC. But that's my problem, not yours. Joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports. He covers college football for them. You can read all this stuff over at cbssports.com. So you posted something on your social media the other day about BYU, and Arizona plays BYU at 4:00 on Saturday. I think it's an under the radar game that I'm fascinated in. Arizona, they're 3-2, but they have arguably the best receiver in the country. BYU 5-0 with a win over SMU, who looks pretty good now. They've got that dominant win on the road against Kansas State. BYU's good. How good are they?
It's a good question. And I do think that something that I'll say is that they're doing some stuff that feels a little unsustainable to keep this alive. But when you also take a step back, the reality is, they have the best resume in the country right now. The road win, like you mentioned, against SMU, the 38-9 win against Kansas State. they have done the thing, and they have left no doubt. Other than letting Baylor back into the game in the second half of that one, they've held every other opponent to 15 points or fewer to this point. So this defense has taken a huge step under defensive coordinator Jay Hill, and I think that this is going to be a great test for them against Arizona. Now, I think they'll play well defensively against Arizona, though they certainly play the best wide receiver that they've played to this point and best passing game between Noah Fafita and Tetsuroya McMillan. But I think that it's actually going to be more about what they're able to generate on offense. They've put a lot on the quarterback, Jake Retzlaff, both in the passing game and the rushing game. He's actually their leading rusher at this point. And part of that is due to injuries, but part of that is also due to the fact that they haven't been able to get a lot going on the ground outside of him. I want to see another playmaker step up for them on offense. We know, of course, what he's able to do in the passing game. And, Chase Roberts has been a player for them, certainly, but I want to see an explosive play from a running back, on a screen pass from a wide receiver. I just want to see them be a little bit more explosive, because I think that when you're heading into a 12-game season, you need to have the ability to make something happen out of nothing. And I think that that's my biggest question about them. But the reality is, if they win this game against Arizona, everything is in front of them. That Oklahoma State game suddenly looks a lot less difficult. They go on the road to UCF, which hasn't looked that good. Then you get the Holy War against Utah, but then it's Kansas, Arizona State, Houston. So even if they don't take some giant step forward across the rest of the season, they've very much got a pathway to being 10-2 and playing in Arlington.
Yeah, that's crazy, because I was big on Utah before the year started. Obviously, Cam Rising continuing to just not be healthy kind of hurts their chances. But I've watched BYU a fairly decent amount, and I'm with you. I think they're really good, which is great for the sport. Last question for you, Shehan, and I will let you go. The nightcap on Saturday is what I think everyone's really looking forward to. Ohio State at Oregon, Ole Miss at LSU. I'm excited for both. They, like, headline-wise, they seem like they're going to be a lot of fun. There's a part of me, though, that wouldn't be surprised if Ohio State kind of blew out Oregon, just because I haven't been super impressed by Oregon, and Ohio State's arguably the best team in the country. I think Ole Miss and LSU is going to be the more entertaining of the two games. What are kind of your thoughts on those two games?
Well, look, I think Ohio State versus Oregon will certainly be a heavyweight battle, but it's going to come down to whether Oregon's ready in the trenches, especially on the offensive line. That's been a weak spot for them this year. They've made some lineup changes on the offensive line that I think have paid some dividends and made things a little more manageable than they were. But it's a big test for them going against an Ohio State defensive front, and defense, frankly, that might be the best in the country right now. So I think that there's definitely a pathway to Ohio State pulling away and making this kind of a laugher, but it's also going to be at Oregon. It's also, Oregon from a talent perspective is one of the few teams in the country that can really hang with Ohio State. They've got elite receivers. They can make plays happen. So I think it's a big test for Oregon. I definitely lean Ohio State, but I could see them pulling away. This LSU Ole Miss game, this is two teams that I just don't know how to feel about them. I don't know that LSU is all that good. And then Ole Miss, again, like they had dominated their non-conference competition, and then they play one kind of real team in Kentucky, and everything goes to hell in a lot of ways. Yeah. So this is going to be a huge test for me. Ole Miss, I think, should win this game handily as well. But I think that they have to play just with a little bit more consistency on the offensive line. They need to run block a little more consistently. And if you can't do that against this LSU team, I don't know when it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's a great point. The thing about Ole Miss and LSU is, just in watching them this year, they both feel like these awesome offensive teams where defensively they just are great. Like I think because it's LSU, we just kind of assumed, it's DBU. They're gonna, be great defensively, and they're just not. Meanwhile, they're throwing the ball all over the yard. It's Ole Miss. It's Lane Kiffin. I understand the concerns about the run blocking, but I just kind of have faith in him to get it figured out. I feel like that game's going to be really high scoring.
Yeah, I think that there's a really good chance that it is. And, look, LSU has two of the top offensive tackles in the country. They've done a good job of protecting Garrett Nussmeier. This is also, I think, a big chance for Ole Miss's defense, especially when you talk about Walter Nolan on the interior, to really try to take advantage and blow up their game plan in a lot of ways. So, like you said, I think that there's a really good chance that it's a high-scoring game. I think that for Ole Miss, if they're able to keep it a little lower, that would be a good situation for them.
Yeah, I completely agree. Shehan, thanks for your time, man. You were great, as always. I always appreciate it when you come on, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Have a good one. That is the great Shehan Jeyarajah. You can follow him on Twitter at Shehan Jeyarajah. You can read all of his stuff at cbssports.com. Does a great job covering college football. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, we're talking Colts. Michael Pittman Jr.'s hurts, along with a lot of other guys that's coming your way here in about 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in. Head over to YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, subscribe. Join the live stream, drop comments in the chat. That way you can be part of the conversation. Michael Pittman Jr., he hurt his back. He can miss multiple weeks, and the injuries for the Indianapolis Colts just continue to pile up. Here's a list of Colts players that didn't practice yesterday. Josh Downs with a toe. Michael Pittman Jr. with a back. Backup running back Trey Sermon. Braden Smith. Jonathan Taylor. Those are the guys who didn't practice yesterday, and that doesn't include the guys on IR like Juju Brents, Tyquan Lewis, DeForest Buckner, Will Fries, and Samson Ebukam. Michael Pittman Jr. could end up on IR as well, apparently, with his back injury. Which isn't, yeah, it is terrible. I almost said, it's not the worst thing in the world. A.D. Mitchell gets to play, but let's be honest. A.D. Mitchell hasn't been great, hasn't lived up to the hype that was set before him before this season started. But he will have plenty of opportunities if Michael Pittman Jr. winds up on IR to prove that, he's willing to put his body on the line. He has an opportunity to change that narrative because he'll become a featured part of the offense quickly, which could be exciting because he's clearly athletic. He's clearly very fast, but he has to be tougher and more competitive. Tough and competitive players in any sport are willing to put their bodies on the line, and A.D. Mitchell just hasn't done that so far. If you want the bright side of the injury report, Kwity Paye and Kenny Moore both practiced yesterday after being out last week. Anthony Richardson was once again a limited participant. Ryan Kelly, starting center, he's back as a full participant. And I've talked a lot about injuries aren't excuses and all these things. But at what point do they become an excuse? If the Colts go out there Sunday without Josh Downs and Michael Pittman Jr. and Jonathan Taylor and all these defensive players missing, how much do the expectations change? If Anthony Richardson beats the Titans on Sunday without his three best offensive players, then that has to mean something, right? This Titans defense is good. They're only giving up 22.5 points a game. They're first in the NFL, only allowing 124 passing yards a game. They're 10th in yards per carry allowed. This is a good Titans defense. And if Anthony Richardson comes out without his, three best offensive pieces, then that has to mean something. And he's going to have a chance to win this game because the Titans, last time I heard, are planning on starting Will Levis. Okay, now they are coming off a bye week, the Titans are, so they'll have a slight advantage there. Plus, the injuries that the Colts are dealing with, that'll help the Titans as well. But I, probably like you, have no faith in Will Levis. If you watched him play at all, then you just know that he's going to turn the ball over. That's just what he does. And if you do something enough, then that's just what you become known for. When I was in college, one of my best friends, his name was KO, or is KO, right? He was known as the wingman. KO was very suave, from Hawaii, very outgoing, could talk to literally anybody. And you knew that if you were hanging out with KO, he was going to figure out a way to get you into a conversation with an attractive female. That's just what he did. It didn't matter if you wanted to talk to females that night or not. He was just going, it was just going to happen because that's just who KO was, right? And Will Levis, very similarly, he's played 13 games this year. He's only played 2 games where he didn't turn the ball over. Okay, Will Levis is known as the guy that turns the football over, and I'm willing to bet he turns it over at least once this week against the Colts. He might even do it twice. That wouldn't be surprising either. And honestly, if there's any week for the Colts to not be healthy, it's this week against the Titans, next week against the Dolphins, week 13 against the Patriots, and week 16 against the Titans. Okay, these feel like 4 games that the Colts can win, without being at full strength because the quarterbacks simply aren't very good. Hopefully, the Colts can get healthy before the game. Obviously, you don't want to play without your best players. But I don't think that the Colts are going to need their best players to win this week because this is simply a bad Tennessee Titans football team. With that being said, Vegas disagrees with me, which isn't comforting. The Colts opened as 1.5-point favorites. And with all the injuries that have piled up, Colts are now 2.5-point underdogs Sunday. That's a 3-point swing. That's a lot. Okay, I'll keep track of the injury report all week. I'll keep you updated. Hopefully, the Colts can be kind of healthy for this divisional game on Sunday, because starting 0-3 in the division is never what you want to happen. And the Colts are on the verge of doing that. And the 49ers could do that tonight. Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdown Substack, he's going to join me in this next segment. We're going to talk a little bit about the Niners tonight. And then we're talking young quarterbacks. How does Anthony Richardson compare to the young quarterbacks in the NFL? I've got that interview for you when we come back here in about 4.5 minutes. Let's call Kevin Potts. Hey, Kevin, how are you, man? It's Jonathan. Man, I'm doing pretty well. Got a good slate of games on Saturday. Good slate of games on Sunday. Excited for the game tonight. Should be good. You said what? It should be. I'm pretty excited. We're set to go here in like 30 seconds, man. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket, hour number 2, getting underway with an outstanding guest, the one and only Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdowns Substack. Kevin, what's going on, man?
Good. It's October, best sports month of the year. We got outstanding game tonight and a great Saturday and Sunday coming up. So I'm excited.
We really do. And you're right. Like, October is the best sports month. I don't know if you're a baseball fan, but I've been enjoying the playoffs. It's been an absolute blast. But like you said, we've got a great game tonight. 49ers, Seahawks. You're a 49ers fan. So I have to ask, 49ers lose tonight. How worried are you about this team missing the playoffs?
I think missing the playoffs, I'm still not overly worried. You're definitely at a point where your margin of error is really, really small when you start 2-4. But they have done this in years past and still won double-digit games and won all. But as far as getting back to the Super Bowl, if you lose this game, you dropped 0-3 in division, 0-4 in conference. You're probably looking at a full wild card slate if you make the playoffs to go to the Super Bowl. So it makes it really challenging for them to achieve what their preseason goal was. But I still think the talent on this team, even if you start 2-4 in a pretty crowded NFC, they still should be fine getting a wild card spot even with a loss tonight.
What's going on with McCaffrey? Is he still in Germany?
I believe he's back. The last news I saw was relatively positive. He did a workout last week and had no setbacks. It seems like they're aiming for around the Chiefs game or maybe out of the bye, so a little bit earlier than that November-December timeline people were expecting. So hopefully they get him back in the lineup because they definitely do miss him.
They definitely do. Joined by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdown Substack. So the reason why I wanted to have you on is because comparison is just something that we naturally do in everything, especially in the NFL. When you draft a young quarterback, you're going to watch every other team with a young quarterback and compare, which has not been enjoyable for Colts fans so far this year. Jayden Daniels especially has just bursted onto the scene. He's been incredible. Did you see Jayden Daniels being this good this fast?
No, I don't think anyone did. I'm not surprised that he was the fastest out of the gate. He was the most experienced quarterback, and his dual threat ability really lended to a high floor that I thought he'd be a good NFL quarterback. But I don't think anyone saw him or just this entire offense for the Commanders playing at such a historic level through 5 games. Even if the schedule's been a little bit weaker, it's been very, very impressive.
It really has. And how much like when I've watched the Commanders, because I have a bet on them to hit the over on their wins, and I bet them to win the NFC East. So I've been watching them a fairly decent amount this year. How much of Jayden Daniels' success is because of the simplicity of the offense? Because like when I watch them, I feel like he's throwing a screen, something really easy short, or he's throwing a deep ball to Terry McLaurin. Like, how much of his success is based on the offense that Kingsbury has put together for him?
I mean, a good chunk. This is what it is as a rookie quarterback. You're going to get the play calling tailored to what you're good at. And I've never been a big Kingsbury guy, but I thought he's been really good, especially this run game has been phenomenal, really mitigating how bad this offensive line is at pass protecting. And you're right, it's been a lot of quick, short passes. And then when Daniels gets outside of the pocket, he extends with his legs, and he throws probably one of the best deep balls in all of football already. So yes, it does help him that it's tailored to his skill set, but he's also executing what they're asking him to do at such an extremely high level that even if you're skipping some of the more advanced quarterbacking stuff and making it a little bit easier on him, you can't undersell how well he is executing what he's being asked to do.
Whenever he takes off to run, do you I don't know about you, but I clinch up and I'm like, please don't get hit. Because I feel like if he does, he's just going to break in half. How worried are you about him potentially getting hurt?
A little bit. I mean, his body type was not the best. He's very skinny. Lamar's pretty much the only guy who's made that work, and he is rare at not getting hit. And it was a big concern for Daniels coming out of college that he takes a lot of big hits. He's been pretty good so far. One of the reasons I was a little bit lower on him compared to May and Caleb is because of that body type. I'm curious, over 3-4 years, how does he hold up? Obviously, we don't know in a 5-game sample size really how much this is going to translate, but he's done a good job so far at not getting hit, getting out of bounds, getting down. So hopefully that continues. Because, yeah, he is a skinnier guy, and if he starts getting hit with the amount that he runs, it could become a problem down the line.
Joined by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdown Substack. Like, when you watch Jaden Daniels versus Anthony Richardson, like, we talk about the concern about Jaden Daniels getting hurt because he's smaller. And, like, you would think that's not a concern with Richardson because he's built like a linebacker. But it seems like every time he gets hit, he seems to get hurt. Like, why do you think that is? Is that just like a Anthony Richardson's fragile thing, or he's just unlucky with where he's getting hit? Why do you think Anthony Richardson can't stay on the field?
Part of it's a little bit of luck. I mean, sometimes injuries happen. But what I think I've noticed watching Richardson is he's not the most flexible athlete. He's a big, explosive one. And guys like Lamar or even Josh Allen at his size are pretty good at absorbing contact and kind of minimizing how hard they get hit. It's a lot more of these glancing blows. Even if the hit looks bad, they really got hit more like on the shoulder as opposed to straight in the sternum, or in Richardson's case, right in the hip. So I think part of it's experience too, learning how to, when you do get tackled, not get fully lit up in the open field. And then the other part of it, like I said, injuries sometimes is just luck, and he might have just had a bad roll of the dice.
Fair enough. Caleb Williams I feel like he's gotten better every week. Obviously, week 1 against the Titans was not pretty. Throws for 300 yards week 3 against the Colts. Has a great game against the Panthers this last Sunday, albeit it's the Panthers. But I feel like he's progressing. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it was a tough start. The Titans and the Texans, 2 pretty good defenses, and they threw him in the deep end. We talked about Jaden Daniels really being helped along by his offense. The Bears have not done that. They have some injuries. The offensive line's been bad. The play calling's been questionable. And they really threw him in the deep end, said you get to go be a big boy quarterback, operate in a pure drop back game, really control the line of scrimmage. And that's tough for a lot of these college quarterbacks who have never done that before. So I'm not surprised it started poorly. But like you said, he's definitely started to settle in. Even if it's Carolina, there's a really cool clip of him talking to his center. The center screamed, "There's a blitz coming." He said, "Yep, I got it. Gets to his quick out route, avoids the blitz. It's the little things like that he's starting to do more consistently. He's hanging in the pocket. It's not, he can still create, but he is trying to operate as a pure drop back passer. You see each week he's getting more and more comfortable. I think by the end of the year, he's going to look really, really good as he gets his feet underneath him in this league.
Do you feel the same way about Richardson? Like, I've heard different film watchers say that the Colts have just kind of thrown him off in the deep end. They aren't really catering to what he does well. Do you kind of feel the same way about him?
Yeah, generally. I think Williams got tossed a little bit more in the deep end. I think there's generally more hand-holding for Richardson just because he works so well in that QB run RPO game that is generally a holding type of scheme. But I do still think when I've watched a couple games on tape this year, he looks good. He's in the pocket. I think he's getting to the right spot. He just misses guys. So, like, the throws are the correct choices for the most part. I mean, he's still young. He'll make some bad decisions. For the most part, I think he looks really good on where he's choosing to throw the ball. He's just missing throws, which you would hope can be fixable with experience and coaching.
That's what we all hope. Joined by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdown Substack. You have a YouTube channel now too, right?
Yeah, I do. YouTube, TikTok, all those video formats as well.
Okay, sounds good. Bo Nix kind of seems pretty similar to Caleb Williams in terms of first couple weeks, not very good. Game against the Jets, not very good, but things kind of seem to slowly be coming together. Is that kind of what you're seeing? Is this just him getting a better grip on the Sean Payton offense? Like, why does it feel like Bo Nix is getting better?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to Caleb's thing. It's hard when you come from college offenses to NFL ones, especially a Sean Payton offense that's going to ask a pretty decent amount of you. He's an experienced guy, so the idea was you're going to take him, he's going to play right away and be fine. Took a little bit, but he's definitely starting to settle in. I think his legs have been awesome. He's done a really good job when things are breaking down of getting out, being athletic, and extending the play. They just don't ask as much of him as these other quarterbacks because their defense is so good. They're like, don't take sacks, don't turn it over too much, keep us in the game. I don't think he'll ever have that high ceiling as a quarterback, but as he gets more settled, I do think he can be a very solid starter and just keep the offense on schedule.
Okay, fair enough. Joined by The one and only Kevin Potts, your guy, the number one quarterback that you had coming out in this draft was Drake May, if I remember correctly. He gets his first start on Sunday. I got to be honest. I just watched the Patriots not be able to protect Jacoby Brissett. And I just don't feel like this is a good deal, a good idea, especially when you're playing against Houston, who gets after the passer at an incredibly high level. Like, is this smart of the Patriots to throw Drake May out there?
Yeah, I don't really understand their overall plan. Waiting 5 weeks doesn't really make Drake May much of a better quarterback. And your offensive line is actually worse from week one. Like you said, Houston, they're number one in quarterback pressure rate on defense. So it's not the easiest landing spot. If they had sat him, I would have preferred they wait till the bye or just the full season, let him get a better launching pad to get into this. With that being said, I was of the opinion that I think he should have started week one. He's going to get hit. It's probably going to look ugly, but he's a big athletic quarterback that can move. He's also dealt with really bad offensive lines going back to college. So I think he'll be fine. I'm not super worried about him getting ruined. I just think the overall plan from the Patriots makes no sense. And it feels like they just panic put him in week 6, even if I think he's probably overall fine long-term. I don't really understand they're sitting him till now and then playing him, when if they were going to do this, he should have just started week 1.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. That, or, maybe just wait one more week and let him play against Jacksonville, whose pass defense has been horrendously bad all year. Speaking of Jacksonville, Colts fans watched Joe Flacco finish off the Steelers, and then they watched him throw for 350 yards against Jacksonville last week. So there's been some rumblings of maybe Joe Flacco should be the starter, let Anthony Richardson sit, let him figure out how to complete the 3rd and 4 out route before you put him back out there. You've got a guy in Joe Flacco who appears to be playing well. Like, do you think the Colts should bench Richardson? Where do you kind of sit out on that?
No, I don't really think that makes any sense for where this team's sitting. Maybe Joe Flacco makes you slightly better in the passing game in the short term, but the way this team has been looking with obviously the injuries they have on the defensive side of the ball, I don't think this team is going to win a Super Bowl. So making a short-term decision on the quarterback and taking away the reps that Richardson so very clearly needs doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. Even if we all love the Joe Flacco story, I just don't think it makes sense to bench your young, talented quarterback for a middling veteran. I'd say the same thing is the case for the Titans with Will Levis and Mason Rudolph. The short-term returns are not worth punting on a long-term answer at quarterback.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. Joined by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdown Substack. He also has a YouTube channel. If you want to find all that, you can follow him on Twitter at KevinPotts06. Yeah, the interesting thing is, that the quarterback draft class from, I guess, two drafts ago now, the one with Richardson and Bryce Young, is, you have 3 quarterbacks go in the top 4. Bryce Young's now the backup in Carolina. CJ Stroud looks good. He's kind of got this like Mahomes thing where, like, even if he's not playing great, you just know that on 3rd and 8 with a minute and a half left, like, you just know that he's going to pick up the first down in some way, shape, or form. And then you've got Richardson, where there's a lot of questions. And like, when it comes to that quarterback class, Will Levis has been the worst of the 4, right? 4 that were drafted. What has his issue been? Is it just as simple as he's not reading defenses very well? Like, why has he been so bad?
He thinks he's Josh Allen, but he's not Josh Allen, is probably the way I'd put it. He just has a little bit of that bozo gene where he just makes really bad decisions and tries to overcreate. He's obviously very physically talented. He's been more physically talented probably most people he's played for majority of his life. So he thinks when he gets outside the pocket or has a throw that he can force it. And I just think he needs more development. Growth is not a linear thing. We've seen that with Darnold and Baker Mayfield. Sometimes guys just take a little bit to get better. And while he's very talented, he just makes really poor decisions when pressure's in his face. And I think with more reps, that should theoretically get better. But yeah, he puts the ball in harm's way too much.
Is the Colts-Titans matchup on Sunday between Will Levis and Anthony Richardson, is this the worst quarterback matchup we're going to see all year?
There's some pretty bad ones out there. Whoever the Raiders are playing, whenever they play a team with bad quarterbacks, I'd probably put them above there. At least Richardson and Will Levis have a feeling of explosive and exciting plays, even if it might be for the other team sometimes. So I still think there's more to watch in young quarterbacks making a mistake than Raiders Browns, where you're trotting out Deshaun Watson and Gardner Minshew. I'd still take the guys in Titans Colts.
Okay, fair enough. Joined by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdown Substack. I'm very curious your thoughts on the college quarterbacks right now. I saw that someone polled NFL GMs and six different guys were selected as QB1. And like when I look at the college landscape, I like Shedeur just because I've seen him make throws under pressure and not really shy away, which I think that's a big deal in the NFL. Who do you kind of like in terms of this next quarterback class?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's pretty much up in the air right now. It wasn't a good class coming in, and there's been some risers, but for the most part, no one's really cemented himself as QB1. I'd probably go Sanders. He was my QB3 coming in the year at a second-round grade on him. I think he's been better this year. I think he's done a really good job. I still don't think he's a first overall type of quarterback, but I'm fine taking him as a mid-first rounder if you bump up from a second-round grade. The two guys that I think everyone's talking about that I'm most excited to sit down at the end of the year is Cam Ward out of Miami and Jalen Milroe out of Alabama, because those are the two dudes that have the physical tools to be legit franchise quarterbacks. They just need to continue to work on their processing, limiting mistakes, not taking sacks, but they have the juice, the star power they look for that could be a number one overall quarterback. But we're only 5 games in. There's still a very big ACC and SEC schedule respectively remaining for these guys to get more reps on tape and see how they really shake out. But I have Sanders at 1 and those two probably at 2, 3, and seeing if they can vault and be the true QB1 in this class.
Cam Ward's interesting. There are moments where I watch him and I'm like, geez, this guy's really good at football. And then, he'll drop back, get flushed out of the pocket to his right, and then he'll throw the ball all the way back across the field. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I like that. So how do you kind of balance I don't want to call it questionable decision-making, because when he does that, it seems like he completes most of them. But I'm sure you watch that and that's not your favorite thing that he does. So how do you kind of mesh those two things of he's very talented, but he also does a couple things that I don't really like?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's never going to completely get out of his game. I mean, we see even some of the top NFL quarterbacks do stupid things like that. But he does have to get better. It was a big reason I didn't love him coming out of the summer. He was my QB5 at a third-round grade. Because, like you said, there's too many bad decisions where you're throwing cross-body, throwing into traffic. He had a big issue with fumbles in recent years. It's gotten better. He's doing a lot more stuff within the structure of the offense in the pocket. He seems a lot more comfortable. He just needs to continue to do better at that. I do think that those parts are always going to be part of his game. He's probably going to turn the ball over a little bit at the next level. But if you can minimize it and make it so it's 3 big plays for every 1 bad play, it becomes a lot more palatable because of the upside that you bring. But he just has to continue to improve at operating within the pocket so you're not always playing backyard ball at the next level.
Makes sense. Last question for you, Kevin, and I will let you go. The reason why I wanted to ask you about the college quarterbacks is because, there's some frustration with the development of Richardson, right? In year 2, how long do you kind of give Richardson before you move on? And if Cam Ward and Jalen Milroe wind up being, not can't miss prospects, but they take kind of another step, are either one of those guys or even Shedeur Sanders or any of these quarterbacks in this class good enough to, potentially replace Richardson as the future here in Indy?
No, I don't think so. I think Richardson's guaranteed at least at year 3. There's just not been enough game film to really evaluate him. I think it would be the year after, as you're starting to evaluate whether you pick up the 5th-year option, start looking at that class. That would be the Nico class, the Arch Manning class, which early indications are that's 2026. That's going to be the quarterback class that everyone's going to be in on. If you're looking at this year, if you're taking a high floor guy and Shedeur Sanders, or you're basically taking another swing on a Jalen Milroe, who is an Anthony Richardson-esque type of quarterback, where it's very athletic, but he lacks polish. So I think Richardson is locked in for at least year 3. Try and get him to 15, 20 career starts, really be able to make an evaluation on him before you have to go pick up that 5th-year option. And if it's really bad, and it usually has to be pretty bad for them to bail, then you start looking at that 2026 class, I'd say.
Okay, that makes sense. Kevin, thanks for your time, man. You were great as always.
Yeah, of course. Always a pleasure.
See ya. That is the great Kevin Potts. Follow him on Twitter at KevinPotts06. Check out his Substack and his YouTube page and all that other kind of stuff. Really, really smart guy. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, Colts, injuries. There's a lot of them. I've got thoughts when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Big thanks to Kevin Potts for coming on the show. Last segment, giving us an update on the young quarterbacks in the NFL and kind of where Anthony Richardson sits compared to those guys. How does he compare to the quarterbacks coming out this year? All that kind of stuff. But we're gonna get a good idea of who Anthony Richardson is on Sunday because the Colts are incredibly banged up. I mean, everybody's hurt. You're not going to find anyone on this Colts roster that isn't hurt. That's just kind of what it seems like so far through this season, and the injuries just continue to pile up. Michael Pittman Jr. is hurt. He could go on the 4-week IR. That wouldn't be good. Josh Downs didn't practice yesterday. Trey Sermon didn't practice. Braden Smith didn't practice. Jonathan Taylor didn't practice. Okay, and that's not even including the guys that are already on IR, including Juju Brents and Tyquan Lewis and DeForest Buckner and Will Fries and Samson Ebukam. And I mean, just all these injuries everywhere. And, you know, there's, I don't know. I don't even know how to say this. I don't want to say that there's a positive in this because we get to see some of the young guys, but there's a small part of me. You know, a few weeks ago, there would have been a big part of me, but as of now, there's a small part of me that is kind of intrigued to see what A.D. Mitchell looks like. Okay, the narrative on him early in the year has been that he's made some business decisions. He hasn't gone up and really attacked the football. And if Michael Pittman Jr. goes on IR for 4 weeks, he's going to have plenty of opportunities to change the narrative about his unwillingness to put his body on the line. Because if Michael Pittman Jr. goes out, we're going to see a lot more of A.D. Mitchell, right? Him, you know, Josh Downs didn't practice yesterday. You know, if he's out Sunday, we're definitely going to see a lot of A.D. Mitchell, but he's going to have an opportunity to kind of change the narrative, right? He'll become a pretty featured part of the offense quickly, which could be exciting. He's clearly athletic. He's clearly very fast. He's clearly explosive, but he's got to be tougher and more competitive. Tough and competitive players in any sport are willing to put their bodies on the line. Tough and competitive players win you games in every sport. And A.D. Mitchell has shown, or hasn't shown, that he's willing to do that, but he's going to have those opportunities in the coming weeks if Michael Pittman Jr. winds up not playing. Okay, if you want good injury news, Kwity Paye and Kenny Moore, they were limited participants yesterday after being out last week. Anthony Richardson was once again a limited participant yesterday. And center Ryan Kelly was a full participant, which is a big deal if, you know, Braden Smith isn't going to play and Will Fries already being on IR after hurting his tibia, which is nuts. And I've talked a pretty fair amount about how injuries aren't an excuse. But at the same time, it's like, at what point do they become an excuse? You know, like if the Colts go on the road on Sunday and, you know, they don't have Josh Downs and they don't have Michael Pittman Jr. and they don't have Jonathan Taylor on this offense, like at what point do we say, okay, yeah, injuries are playing a pretty significant role in why the Colts are losing games? Right now, there's like this interesting bridge to kind of, or gap to kind of bridge here between, you know, what Gus Bradley said yesterday. They handpicked these guys to be on the 53-man roster, so we should expect for them to play well. But at the same time, it's like these guys are backups for a reason. And when you don't have your three, you know, most important weapons on offense, like how much can you expect from the offense? So I'm very interested to see what this Colts offense looks like Sunday. I'm ready to see the injury report for today. Like, do any of these guys come back? Does Josh Downs practice today? Is Anthony Richardson finally a full participant? Like, what's going to happen? And how does this impact our perception of Anthony Richardson? Like, if Anthony Richardson goes out against the Titans on Sunday, who by all accounts have a good defense, okay, if Richardson goes out there and beats them or just plays well without his three best offensive weapons, like that has to mean something, right? Right? Like that has to mean something. Like this Tennessee Titans defense is good. They're only giving up 22.5 points a game. They're first in the NFL and only allowing 124 passing yards a game, which is absurdly good. They're 10th in the NFL in yards per carry allowed. Okay, like they stop the run, they stop the pass. This is a good Tennessee Titans defense that Anthony Richardson might have to play against without his three best offensive players. And if he goes out there and he succeeds and he plays well without those three guys, it's going to be hard to walk away from that game not impressed. Simple as that. And he's going to have a chance to win this game, whether he plays well or not. And that's because he's playing against Will Levis. Okay, the worst quarterback drafted from that draft class 2 years ago. Okay, he's been nothing short of terrible, right? And the Titans, they're coming off a bye week. They'll have a slight advantage because of that. It's always, an advantage to have an extra week of prep and all those things. An extra week to get healthy. Will Levis got hurt on Monday Night Football. I'm assuming he's going to be ready to go for Sunday. Right. And plus, all the injuries that the Colts have will help them out as well. But I have no faith in Will Levis whatsoever. Like, he's going to turn the ball over. Like, that's just what he does. If you do something enough, then that's eventually just what you become known for. And it's something that becomes expected of you. For example, like when I was in college, my best friend in college, his name was KO. And he was known as, like the wingman, because you knew that if you were with KO, didn't matter where you were, out in public, at a party, hanging out at the dorm, just walking around campus, at the cafeteria, wherever you were, you knew that if you were with KO, he was going to figure out a way. And sometimes it wasn't even on purpose. He was going to figure out a way to put you into a conversation with some sort of attractive woman. He was a great friend to have because of this, right? And it didn't matter if you wanted to talk to women that day or not. Like, it was just going to happen because that's who KO was, and that's just what he did. And when you look at Will Levis, he's the guy who turns the football over. Like, that's just who he is. Will Levis has played 13 games in his career. He's only played in 2 games where he didn't turn the ball over. So in 11 out of the 13 games that he's played in, he's turned the ball over at least once. He's got multiple games where he's turned it over more than once. Okay, and I'm willing to bet that this trend continues and he turns the ball over at least once against the Colts, or at least he gives the Colts opportunities to create turnovers, because that's just who he is. He might even turn it over twice. That wouldn't be surprising. So the Colts are going to have a chance to win this game because I think Will Levis is going to keep the Colts in it because he's not very good and he's going to turn the football over. And honestly, if there's any week where the Colts don't need to be healthy, I would say it's this week against the Titans, the following week against the Dolphins, and week 13 against the Patriots, and of course, week 16 when the Colts host the Titans here in Indy. Those feel like the 4 games where the Colts can win if they aren't at 100%, because the quarterbacks they're playing against simply aren't very good. Like, Anthony Richardson doesn't need to be great this weekend, no matter who's available. Okay, like, he just needs to be solid. Hit on a couple big plays to Alec Pierce, who's still healthy and has done a great job this year, has really emerged as this deep downfield threat. Like, hit a couple of those, pick up a couple first downs with your legs, slide after you do so, and then the Colts should be fine because this Tennessee Titans offense is really bad. Okay, now hopefully, the Colts can be healthy-ish before the game. Obviously, you don't want to play games without your best players, but I don't think the Colts need their best players to beat this bad Tennessee Titans team. But that being said, Vegas disagrees with me, which is not comforting. The Colts opened as 1.5-point favorites, and with all the injuries that have piled up, Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs not practicing, Jonathan Taylor isn't back in practice yet. With all these injuries that have piled up, the Colts are now 2.5-point underdogs. Like, that's a 3-point swing. That's not normal. Usually when lines come out and people start betting them, they'll move by half a point or maybe a full point if it's really lopsided. But 3 points is a lot. I'm going to be keeping my eye on this injury report all day today. I'm going to look at it again tomorrow because this is a big game for the Colts. They need to avoid starting 0-3 in divisional games. Like, that is a big deal. You don't want to start 0-3 because that's just not fun. So, plus, this is also an opportunity for them to improve to 3-3 and have a chance to be over 500 when they play the Dolphins the following week. So hopefully the Colts can find a way to get healthy. Hopefully Anthony Richardson plays decently well on Sunday and the Colts can find a way to win. But more importantly, like this Colts team, they really need to get healthy because there's injuries everywhere. And that is, that only makes things harder in a league that it's really hard to win in. So when we come back here in about 4 minutes, I've got thoughts on Anthony Richardson. How does he kind of compare to other quarterbacks in the NFL, especially the young guys? Because, that's what we're going to do. We're going to compare Anthony Richardson to every other young quarterback going forward. And because that's just what NFL fan bases do. I've got thoughts on Anthony Richardson when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you're having a nice Thursday. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's watching live on YouTube at _ Jonathan Smith if you want to follow me there, at Ticket 1430 if you want to follow the station for all the news and updates on my show and the Dan Dockett Show, which follows mine from noon to 3. You can also watch on YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. Head over there and subscribe. Rookie quarterbacks, Anthony Richardson, just young quarterbacks in general. How does Anthony Richardson compare? We as people, we compare everything. Okay, I compare myself all the time to other people in the industry just because I'm a competitive person. I want to be better than everyone else. I'm just naturally that way. I want to win at everything, and I'll do just about anything to win at just about anything. For example, when the new college football game came out, the first day I played it, I went through multiple playbooks, circled the plays I liked, circled the plays that or X'd out the plays that I didn't like, just so I could create my own playbook because I wanted all the best plays in the game to be accessible to me so that I could beat people, okay? I'm a bit of a psycho, but it's fine. It's fine. I'm competitive, and sports fans are the exact same way, especially NFL fans with young quarterbacks, okay? You're just constantly comparing whoever your young quarterback is to every other young quarterback in the NFL. And if they show any sign of being good, then NFL fans will defend their young quarterback until the day they die. 49ers fans will defend Brock Purdy like he's their own son. Okay, even though he'll never enter that upper echelon of quarterback play with the Mahomeses and the Allens and the Jacksons and the Burrows. Right? It doesn't matter because Brock Purdy, young quarterback, he is the 49ers guy, and they're going to swear by him. Dolphins fans do the exact same thing with Tua. Don't care that he's had 4 concussions. Don't care that he can't win in January. They don't care about any of that. He's their guy. Or he was kind of good for a year, and they're like, all right, this is our dude. We don't care that he's injury prone, and we don't care that he can't win in cold weather. Okay, when young quarterbacks show any sign of competency, fans just kind of gravitate to him because they very much want something or want their quarterback to be good. And the Colts are in this space as of right now. The issue is Anthony Richardson hasn't shown a ton of consistency. There's a lot of Colts fans on the fence about Anthony Richardson, and there's plenty against the idea of Anthony Richardson ever being good enough to be a franchise quarterback. But here's the truth of the matter. If he shows, 3 games in a row's worth that he could be a franchise quarterback, a lot of people are going to flip incredibly fast because that's just the way the NFL fans work. And as of right now, I think that comparison is the thief of joy that Colts fans have, because when you look around the NFL and you look around and you look at the young quarterbacks in the league, a lot of these guys are simply playing better than Anthony Richardson. Okay, I think one of the worst things for Anthony Richardson this year is that Jaden Daniels has been awesome immediately, and that's the only word that you can use for Jaden Daniels. Right? We sit back, you watch him, you're like, oh, here's this rookie who's just taking the league by storm, right? Making big throws in prime time. And, I the game I think I'm most excited for on Sunday is, Commanders and Ravens, because it's Jaden Daniels against Lamar Jackson, right? And so Colts fans who want Anthony Richardson to be good, they sit back and they watch that, and they don't think about anything else that really matters with the development of quarterbacks. Okay, they don't think about how, Jaden Daniels played 55 games in college compared to Anthony Richardson's 24. Right? They don't think about how Jaden Daniels threw almost 1,500 passes in his college career compared to Anthony Richardson's 393. Okay? Things are only going to get worse for Anthony Richardson as this year progresses. Right? Because Bo Nix is kind of starting to figure some things out in Denver. And Caleb Williams is starting to figure some things out in Chicago. Those guys are only going to get better every single week, right? And we're seeing that happen. We've seen this progression from Bo Nix and Caleb Williams. And meanwhile, Anthony Richardson's hurt again. And if he plays on Sunday, I don't think that his accuracy issues are going to be fixed overnight. And, that's a frustrating thing for Colts fans to sit back and watch. And so just a little reminder here, Anthony Richardson, incredibly raw, hasn't played a ton of football. Just hasn't. Only threw 393 passes in college, was hurt in high school, barely played there, barely played at Florida, and now he's being asked to quarterback an NFL team. And meanwhile, we have to sit back and watch Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix and CJ Stroud and these other young quarterbacks have success. And it's a frustrating thing. It's frustrating to see Jaden Daniels be this star immediately. And it's like, why can't Anthony Richardson be that? And I do want to provide some context for Jaden Daniels and his stardom. He's been great. I'm not going to deny that. But we're ignoring the fact that he's faced the 28th, 15th, 19th, and 18th ranked pass defenses in 4 of his 5 games. We're also ignoring that the combined record of the 5 teams that he's played against this year is 9-17. Okay? Very easy schedule for him to start. The only team with a winning record that he's played is the team that he lost to, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who aren't even that good, or who are fine. They're average. Okay, but we ignore all that though, because he looks good. I like Jaden Daniels. He's been the best rookie quarterback so far. I'm not trying to say he's terrible, but if we're honest, he hasn't played against the best teams in the NFL. He's played 5 teams that all look like they aren't going to make the playoffs. Okay, the Buccaneers might, but I don't think anyone's really scared of them. I just want to see more. That's all I'm saying. But my point is that it's early. We are 5 games into the season. Okay, we are 8 games into the career of Anthony Richardson, because that's how many games he's played in. He's only started and finished 4. And if your argument around Anthony Richardson is he's never going to be able to stay healthy enough to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, then I will digress and I'll say, hey, you undoubtedly have a point there. But if your argument against Anthony Richardson is based in he's not very good and he never will be any good, then I've got a lot of questions. Okay, I get it. He's looked really bad to start the year. Okay, not even really bad. He's just missed some throws that we feel like an NFL quarterback should make. You sit back and you watch him drop back and he sails, a 7-yard out route. And I'm just like, and your response is, geez, the quarterback at Center Grove could make that throw. And that's kind of the thing. If the quarterback at Center Grove can make that throw, then certainly we can teach Anthony Richardson how to make that pass. Okay, all I'm asking when it comes to the evaluation of Anthony Richardson is that we're honest. If you want to say, hey, he's injury prone, he can't stay healthy, the Colts should move on for that reason, I will not argue. Will not argue against that. But if you really want to sit there and tell me he's not going to develop after I'm literally sitting here watching Bo Nix get better every week, I'm watching Caleb Williams get better every week. I watched Lamar Jackson improve over the course of his career. Patrick Mahomes has improved over the course of his career. Josh Allen improved over the course of his career. Jalen Hurts improved over the course of his career. So it is possible to develop and help young quarterbacks get better. Okay, if that wasn't the case, then potential wouldn't matter. It wouldn't in any sport. Right? We see guys improve in every single sport that we watch. Okay, and we just have to be patient, which I know people hate that word in the world of sports because everyone wants to be good right away, but we have to be patient when it comes to Anthony Richardson, right? Because it takes time for young quarterbacks to improve, right? And for some guys, it takes longer than others, like Baker Mayfield, okay? Shows up in Cleveland, right? Has a good rookie year, struggles his next 2 years, gets traded away because they wanted Deshaun Watson. What a debacle that's been. All right, and then he goes to Carolina where he doesn't play, and then he goes to the Rams where he doesn't play, and he winds up signing a free agent deal with the Buccaneers, and now he looks like a solid NFL quarterback. Guys improve over the course of time, and we have to give Anthony Richardson time to improve. Okay, but once again, if he can't stay on the field and he doesn't improve because of that, then fair enough, the Colts should probably move on. But in talking to Kevin Potts earlier, he made a great point because I asked him this question of, is this upcoming, rookie class of quarterbacks, good enough to justify moving off of Anthony Richardson? And he was very quick to say no. As good as Shedeur Sanders looks, his ceiling just isn't high enough to justify moving off of Richardson. So the reality of the situation is we're getting at least one more year of this guy. And I really hope he develops. I think he has a great opportunity on Sunday against a good Tennessee Titans defense. Number one in passing yards allowed per game at 124. That's absurd to only give up 124 passing yards a game on average. Like, that is an absurd stat just in and of itself. I know it's early. I know it's only been 5 games, but still, that is incredibly impressive, right? And they're also, top 10 in yards per carry allowed. Like, if Anthony Richardson goes out there on Sunday without Michael Pittman Jr. and potentially without Josh Downs, who didn't practice yesterday, and he's awesome, then we're very quickly going to change our tune on who he is and who he can be as a starting quarterback in the NFL. Okay, you have to give young quarterbacks time to develop, just like how in basketball, we're going to have to give, these first-round picks time to develop, because that's just the reality of sports. When you draft, young athletes who are still developing, because your physical prime isn't until you're, 27, 28, 29, whatever that is, then, you have to give guys time. That's just the simple reality of it. It's the same thing with, the Pacers, right? They draft Jarris Walker 2 years ago, 8th overall. And he didn't play it all last year, right? But you have to give him time to improve and to become a better player, right? It's the same thing with Richardson. He needs time. He needs reps. He didn't play a ton, only 393 passing attempts in college. He's only started and finished 4 games in his NFL career. He just needs time, just like how Caleb Williams and Bo Nix needed time this year to improve and to become better starting quarterbacks. It's going to be the same thing with Drake May. We're going to watch him go out there and make his first start against Houston, and he's probably going to be terrible. He might die, as a matter of fact, because that defense is really good. Okay, and they get after the passer and all those things, right? You have to give a guy time to accumulate reps so that you can properly evaluate them. Okay, I'm not saying that the Colts hold on to Anthony Richardson for the next 4 years. That would be stupid. Okay, if he doesn't develop, if he develops into a good quarterback, then keep him for the next decade. Okay, but either way, the guy needs time. He needs reps. Okay, the Colts are going to hold on to him this year and probably next year as well, because this upcoming rookie quarterback class, these guys that are in college right now, it's not very good. It's not very good. I mean, unless you guys want him to go draft Jalen Milroe, who's, as Kevin said, cut from a pretty similar cloth as, Anthony Richardson in terms of athletic, but pretty raw and unpolished. Unless you want for them to go draft Cam Ward, who just doesn't make very good decisions with the football. Unless you want them to go draft Shedeur Sanders, who's going to be an interesting case study in the NFL. Unless that's what you want for them to do, then, I don't know. But it's worth it. Wait, because give him that one more year. Figure out if he can play or not. Figure out if he can stay healthy or not. And then we can kind of move on from there. Thanks for tuning in to the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Greatly appreciated. Head over to YouTube. Subscribe. Indies Sports Ticket. That's the name of the YouTube channel. Watch the live stream there. Join the chat. Be part of the conversation. The Dan Dockett Show is coming up next from noon to 3. Got a good slate of guests. Should be a great, great show. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to tune in. I'll be back on the air again tomorrow from 10 to noon. Big time Friday. We're giving out bets. Can't wait. Hopefully the Sack Man calls into Dan's show at some point today to tell us how to bet the NFL game tonight. 49ers Seahawks. If you're driving around and you want to listen to that game right here, Indy Sports Ticket, this is the place to listen. I'll be back on the air tomorrow. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow starting at 10 a.m.